Hello, everybody. I'm Bob Sherman and delighted to be here for another matinee Wednesday. American classical music took many generations to break away from European models, but Europe followed us when it came to ragtime and jazz. What is ragtime? Where did it come from? Where is it going? And where did it go? For the answers and some fabulous music by Scott Joplin and Jelly Roll Morton and other American keyboard giants, we turn to our own piano maestro, Peter Muir. He learned about ragtime in England, but came here to get his doctorate at City College, so I guess we should call him Dr. Peter Muir. Now, it's a joy just to hear this music. It is so infectious, but to understand what makes it so captivating and to follow its journey into jazz, that what I expect will be very special in what awaits today. Now, one of Scott Joplin's best-known ragtime pieces is called The Entertainer, and I suspect one way and another that's a good description of what we'll be hearing today. So enjoy, and I'll stop by later with a look ahead to Downtown Music's finale next week.
Hi, I'm Peter Muir, and welcome to the Rise of Ragtime. We're going to be looking at the extraordinary American phenomenon of ragtime and how it arose in American culture, beginning in the 1890s and continuing through to the rise of jazz about 20 years later, about 1917, 1918, 1919. And I'm going to start off this afternoon by playing you a very early rag. This is from 1897, and it's called At a Georgia Camp Meeting, written by a fellow called Kerry Mills. So now we need to talk about something absolutely central to my topic, which is, what is ragtime? How is it different from the styles that went before? The answer is because of one word, syncopation, which you probably know is spelled Syncopation, syncopation, which is defined as a displacement or an anticipation of the regular beat. And a very dry definition like that doesn't sound like it's much fun at all, but it actually is. Here's just to go back to the At a Georgia Camp meeting. Here's the main theme. Here it is without syncopation. And it's not terribly interesting. It doesn't have much character. Here it is with the syncopation again. So the syncopation is what gives it character. That's in my right hand. In my left hand is entirely unsyncopated. It's very regular. Etc. And that, of course, is not interesting at all on its own. But put them together, they're having kind of like an argument together. It's like the right hand is this sort of little kid that's playing around freely, and the left hand is like the stern adult that's going. So to put them together, there's almost like a little fight going on between the two hands. And hey presto, a new style, ragtime, is formed. And in fact, my analogy of the little kid, my right hand being all syncopated and my left hand being the stern adult, is not unapt, because when ragtime first emerged in the 1890s, there were all sorts of intergenerational fights going on between the older generation, who thought it was the most outrageous thing, and the younger generation, who thought it was fun and charming, the same as we think of it today. So that's the essence of ragtime. It's all in syncopation. Now, the At a Georgia Camp meeting I played is an example of what we call early ragtime style, and the syncopation is relatively mild. In later ragtime, more mature ragtime, the syncopation tends to be, particularly the pieces that have endured and become iconic, are rather more intense. And this adds this extra rhythmical vitality to the music. I'm going to play you now a piece that was written only 2 years after At a Georgia Camp meeting, but it represents, more than just about any other piece ever written, ragtime in its high maturity. This is Scott Joplin's Maple Leaf Rag, and it was the first rag to become really very popular, and it really influenced the whole development of ragtime. This is Scott Joplin's Maple Leaf Rag. Scott Joplin's Maple Leaf Rag, one of the great masterpieces of ragtime. Now, while we think of ragtime today as being mainly piano music, like the sort of thing I'm playing today, actually, if you go back to the actual ragtime era, the majority of publications of ragtime were songs, not piano music. Basically because it's easier to sing than play the piano, and so songs were more likely to catch on. And this started early in ragtime's development. And one of the first hits, the ragtime song hits, I'm going to do for you now. This is from the same year as Maple Leaf Rag, 1899. It was a song that not only brought the ragtime element into the music, but also into the lyrics. And also in terms of the lyrics, it capitalized on a novelty invention that had recently started to catch on as well, a piece of technology, and brought them all together in an irresistible hit. This is Hello My Baby. I've got a little baby, but she's out of sight. I talk to her across the telephone. I never see my baby, but she's mine, alright. So take a tip and leave that girl alone. Every single morning you can hear me yell, hey Central, fix me up upon the line. He connects me with my honey, and I rings the bell. And this is what I say to baby mine. Hello, my baby, hello, my honey, hello, my ragtime girl. Send me a kiss by wire. Baby, my heart's on fire. If you refuse me, honey, you'll lose me, then you'll be left alone. Oh, baby, telephone and say that I'm your own. Hello, hello, hello there. This morning on the phone she said her name was Bess. So now I kinda know where I am at. I'm satisfied because I've got my babe's address pasted in the lining of my hat. I am mighty scared, 'cause if the wires get crossed, will separate me from my baby mine. Then some other guy will win her and the game is lost. So every day I shout upon the line. Hello my baby, hello my honey, hello my ragtime girl. Send me a kiss by wire. Baby, my heart's on fire. If you refuse me, honey, you lose me, then you'll be left alone. Oh baby, telephone and say that I'm your own. Hello, 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 hello there. As mentioned, ragtime moved very quickly into its maturity. It sort of burst on the scene in the late 1890s with rags like At a Georgia Camp Meeting I played, and very quickly rags of the quality of the Maple Leaf Rag. Actually, that one was really exceptional, but really high quality rags written by the great Scott Joplin and many other people started to appear in great numbers. And by the turn of the century, ragtime really was this whole new musical phenomenon that hit America and also Europe as well. I'm going to show, just in the time we have, just a couple of examples of, just play a couple of examples of ragtime at its at its mature, in its mature style, just to show the range of different creativity that was going on. These are examples are taken pretty much at random, but they're both two rags that I'm very fond of. One was written in 1901 by a fellow called E. Harry Kelly, who was a white composer, pianist, band leader from the Midwest. And this is a slow rag that he wrote called Peaceful Henry. Peaceful Henry by E. Harry Kelly. I'm going to continue with another one of my favourite rags from the golden era of ragtime, which you can date from approximately, say, about 1900 through to about 1909, 1910. This was a rag written in 1908 by an African-American composer called James Scott, who was somebody who knew Scott Joplin. He was a friend of Scott Joplin. And like Scott Joplin, he was in the Midwest. He was in Kansas City for many years. And he published many rags. And This was probably his most famous, and it's very aptly named. It's called Grace and Beauty, and I offer this as an example of ragtime in its absolute maturity. So, as well as those two examples of slowish, the style we call classic ragtime, very sophisticated, harmonically complex, just sort of complex music really in every way, very much aiming to be the equivalent of art music. We had a much more popular style of ragtime that came along and that emerged sort of from about 1904 through to about 1909, 1910. And it produced some of the most popular styles of the day. This was a much more virtuosic style and really a lot of fun. I'm going to play you one of these examples now. This was one of the most popular. It's called Black and White Rag. Black and white, I suppose, referring to the keys on the piano. And it was written by a fellow called George Botsford, who was a prolific composer of things like ragtime instrumentals and songs and popular songs and waltzes and you name it. Black and White Rag by George Botsford. As the first decade of the 20th century came to an end, around 1909, 1910, around there was a feeling that ragtime was beginning to lose its creative momentum. Suddenly it had all become rather formulaic. Some of the best composers had sort of moved on to other things or had sort of written themselves out. And the whole thing was feeling a little bit moribund. And people were asking, is this actually the end of ragtime? And at that point, something very unexpected happened, which was one person wrote one song that became an enormous mass hit. It was the most popular song, in fact, of 1911, so around the beginning of the second decade, 1911. And it really, again, put the ragtime concept back on the map and reinvented it for everybody. And the composer was the great Irving Berlin. And the song in question was Alexander's Ragtime Band, which was the most popular song of the era. It was just a smash hit. And as I said, it sort of reinvented really what ragtime was. It redefined what ragtime was for the second decade of the 20th century. Let's do it now. Oh my honey, better hurry and let's meander. Ain't you going to the leader man, ragged meter man? Oh my honey, let me take you to Alexander's stand brass band. Ain't you coming along? Come on in here, Alexander's Ragtime Band. Come on in here, it's the best band in the land. You can hear a bugle call like you never heard before, so natural that you want to go to war. That's just the bestest band. What am my honey lamb? Come on along, let me take you by the hand. Up to the man, who's the leader of the band. And if you want to hear that Swanee River played in ragtime, come on in here, Alexander's Ragtime Band. Like you never heard before, so natural that you want to go to war. That's just the bestest band. What am my honey lamb? Come on along, let me take you by the hand. To the man who's the leader of the band. And if you want to hear that Swanee River played in ragtime, come on and hear, Alexander's Ragtime Band. All right. So, Alexander's Ragtime Band. So, as I said, it redefined really what ragtime was in the second decade of the 20th century. How did it do that? Well, just as with ragtime itself, when it first appeared in the 1890s, there was a rhythmical trick that ragtime had that distinguished it from other styles. That, of course, was syncopation. We talked about it earlier. So this piece has something new in it rhythmically, and that is the use of what you might call uneven rhythms. To explain, let's take a song like, say, the Maple Leaf Rag. This is all even notes, even rhythms. Ba 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 ba. It's all ba 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 ba. It's all sixteenths, right? What Irving Berlin did in Alexander's Ragtime Band was he created a melody that used what are often called dotted rhythms, although strictly speaking they're not exactly that, but very close to that. Ba-bum, 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 rather than... That would be even. This is dotted. And suddenly it gives it this extra character. So this was the new trick of ragtime. And ragtime uses what we'll call dotted rhythms. Was rare in the first decade of the 20th century, but in the second decade, particularly following the success of Alexander's Ragtime Band, it started to become much more common. Now, what's the significance of this? The answer is that the entire vernacular culture was moving, American vernacular culture was moving from ragtime towards jazz, because jazz uses those uneven beats, ba-bum, ba-bum. It's what's often called swing, to make the music swing. So that's what was happening. Swing was effectively coming in music, and it was being notated, it was being heard, it was being notated. And it was starting to become very, very popular. Now, the word jazz itself did not appear in this context, certainly not in any mainstream context, until 1917. So a few years after Alexander's Ragtime Band, which was 1911. But everything is becoming jazzier. That's the way to think of ragtime in the 19-teens. It's gradually becoming well, not gradually, it's rapidly, I would say, becoming jazzier. It's getting much more of a jazz feeling to it. And that makes it very different from the jazz, from the ragtime that had been produced in the decade before. So it has a different flavour now. I'd like to play you a ragtime instrumental from 1915, well along the path here of towards jazz. This was actually just 2 years, 1915, just 2 years before the first jazz records were before the word jazz was really being used in music. But the style had all but evolved. One of the things I really enjoy as a musicologist is making discoveries of pieces that are very little known, but which I consider wonderful pieces. This is one of them. You probably won't have heard of it, and you won't have heard of its writer either. The writer was called Sidney K. Russell, and as far as I know, we know nothing about him at all. This was published on the West Coast. He published a few other things which were not very consequential, but he published this, and I think it's a wonderful piece. It's called Too Much Raspberry. How can you go wrong with a title like that? And you hear that there are these dotted rhythms, these uneven rhythms throughout the entire song. For instance, the first theme is like this. As opposed to like that, which would just be the even older ragtime style. This is the newer ragtime style. So this is, please enjoy, because you probably won't have heard it before, and as I said, I hope you agree, it's a terrific piece. This is Too Much Raspberry by Sidney K. Russell. What a great piece. One of the things that's pretty amazing about it is it's just harmonically so interesting. Like it keeps moving through these unusual progressions, like and then and things like that all the way through, and it's completely original. And I wish I knew who this person was, but we don't. Anyway, so that really has now moved. Can you see how the music has morphed from ragtime into jazz in all but name? So we come to our final item. I thought I would finish with a piece of fully evolved jazz piano. You will hear all the ragtime characteristics that we've noticed today. The left hand moving around all the time, like that. This very steady, providing the rhythm for the music. The syncopated and now, of course, dotted, uneven right hand, because it's now really swinging away. And this is really the journey of ragtime into jazz over a period of 20 years, because this first piece I played today was 1897. That was at a Georgia camp meeting. And this one is exactly 20 years later, 1927. It's Alligator Crawl, written by the great Thomas Fats Waller, one of my favorite people. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope you've enjoyed this concert. And thank you for watching. Here we go. Alligator Crawl by Fats Waller.
a fun and enlightening hour we've just enjoyed with Peter Muir. Now, I think we've had, actually, I may be a little prejudiced, but we've had a fabulous parade of artists through this whole season. And for our grand finale next week, we're going to greet the return of Angelica, the women's chamber choir directed by Marie Caruso. Now, we have counted on this superb ensemble for holiday concerts through many of Downtown Year's 33 years. But this time, Angelica has created a special spring concert, and that's just for us chickens here. So it should be very, very special indeed. And it involves, I'm quoting from Marie Caruso now, it will carry us from expressions of despair to prayers of hope and the joys of rebirth. Now, if you'd like to help support these free stream concerts, you'll find a donation button on the Downtown Music website, and that's dtmusic.org. If you'd like to join our mailing list or have ideas or comments you'd like to share with us, the address is almost the same, info@dtmusic.org. Now let's see, have I forgotten anything? Yes, if you would like to get a brochure, a 34th anniversary Downtown Music brochure whenever it's ready, add your mailing address, but it's the same, info@dtmusic.org. So stay well, and don't forget that we'll be joined by singing angels next week. I'm Bob Sherman. So long, everybody.